Well, it says you are live. So, hello, everyone. Coach Leanne and I are here again to talk with you about how does destructive behavior hide behind charm and spiritual language. And I'm waiting to see if Instagram will go live. Let me see if we can get that going live while we're here.
Way to go, Leslie.
All right, here we go. We're live on both places. Let us know that you are here with us. I didn't get any notice, Leanne, from anybody who's helping us. Did you get a notice of who's helping us today?
I don't believe I did.
Oh,
so we'll just, we got each other.
Yes.
And we have our lovely community here. Welcome, everyone. Good evening. Go ahead and drop into the chat. You wanted to come to this space. You're wondering, I love the first word of this title, Leslie. As you know, we're waiting for people to chime in, learn. So we're here, right, to discuss, to learn, to do, maybe peel back some layers about how destruction can hide behind charm and spiritual language. I see you, Ruth. Hi, Irma. Welcome, everybody.
All right, welcome. We're so glad that you're here. This is a really, I think, tricky topic because charm is so very charming. Right? And it's so seductive and it's so lovely. I mean, when you're in the presence of a charming woman or a charming man, charming pastor, what are some of the qualities that you appreciate, that you enjoy? What are some of the qualities of a charming person? Put them in the chat. We would love to distinguish so that you can begin to see how someone may use their natural charisma, their natural charm in a destructive way against you, and how they may manipulate you with spiritual sounding language that they use in such a charming, passionate way that you can be completely deceived. I mean, I think of some of the big stories like Jim Jones and when they drank the Kool-Aid. Jim Jones was a charming guy. He was a charmer. He was very charismatic. And we look at all the church leaders today who are falling like flies, and they also are very charming men of a church denomination. We would have said they are men of God. They're not men of God. They're not men of integrity, but they are charming. They're very passionate. And so in order for you to understand what's really going on, especially if you're in a relationship with someone, you need to be able to discern. The Bible tells us in Hebrews that as we mature, we're to be able to discern or train our senses to discern the difference between evil and good. And why would we need to be maturely discerned to be able to discern that difference? It's because evil often looks good because it is charming. It is charming. And so we want to help you understand that if you are in a relationship with someone who is very outwardly charming, it still may be destructive because it's hiding destructive behavior underneath.
Well, absolutely.
Compliments. Yeah, go ahead.
Compliments. Indeed. And I'm thinking of some different things that I would, if I were to categorize charm, I think I am very much a eye contact person. And so when somebody makes eye contact with me, I get a little bit more captivated than those who are looking all over the place when they're talking to me. And so I have to be careful, Leslie, because for me, that is almost a symbol of safety for me if someone is willing to look me in the eye. So I can be deceived by that type of behavior.
It's interesting you say that because I had a friend who met a very famous person. I won't name his name, but he was a very, very, one of the most famous people. You would immediately know his name if I told you. And she met him and he shook her hand and he looked her in the eye. And she said to me, he was so charming. He made me feel like I was the most beautiful, only woman in the room. Probably if he had asked me to go to a hotel room, I would have. That's how charming he was in just 60 seconds. So that he totally, and this was a godly woman, but she was so captivated by his charm that it was seductive. It was quite seductive for her. And thankfully she got some fresh air in a few minutes, but he was very charming.
Well, it is. And that eye contact, I love that you brought that up, Leslie. It's, that touch, right? Because I mean, and this is where it can get messy and sticky. Because when someone extends a hand of friendship to you, that can be charming to you. It can be endearing. It can be endearing. And it's easy for us to immediately trust if things that we admire that are charming are in our sphere. We can be misled and we can have false trust when it hasn't been earned yet with somebody because of eye contact, touch. Maybe it's a warm smile. Maybe it's a hand on the shoulder. Maybe it is wow, I am so grateful to see you or to meet you. And inside they're thinking about 500 other people and they're not fully engaged. And so charm can be incredibly, I love that you said mask. It can mask what's truly going on the inside because charm isn't a character quality. I would say charm is a strategy.
Yeah, and sometimes it's just a gift. I mean, even little kids have some cute personalities, some charming personalities. It's not like they're trying to be manipulative or any of those kind of things. They're just adorable and they're, funny and just naturally likable. And so there are some people who have that charismatic quality and they're not trying to use it in malicious ways. So please don't, put horns on everybody who might have a charming personality. But be discerning, especially when you are targeted. And so how do you discern charm from character? So I have a whiteboard here, and we're going to kind of put some words down because I think it's really important to understand the manipulator strategy. And oftentimes when you're dating someone, or maybe you're counseling with a counselor, or maybe you're talking to a pastor, or maybe you're asking advice of a friend, or maybe you're meeting a new friend. How would you discern, as you're getting to know this person, the difference between a person of character or a person of great charisma and charm? And that doesn't mean you shouldn't hang out with them. It just means that those are two very different things. And I think, at least in my experience as a counselor over the years, when women are dating men, they're much more taken by good charm than they are looking at good character. They really like the flattery. They really like the presence. They really like the attention. They really like the love bombing. They really like the flattery. And who doesn't? But those things aren't character qualities. They're charming for sure. And they kind of grab our hearts. And so let's make a list so that we can together, what are some qualities of charm and character? And how would we discern the difference? So one is they're funny. Okay, charming person can be funny. Now they're not all funny, but that would be one quality, is they're funny. That's not a character quality, right? Being funny is not a character quality. It's just a personality quality, right? And it can be charming, right? What's another character quality or charm quality?
Leslie, I love just a little bit ago, you said flattery.
Okay, so someone who flatters. You're so beautiful. Oh my gosh, I've never met a woman who had the eyes that you have. Your eyes are so sparkly. Your smile is great. And I'm not saying this is insincere. This might be totally sincere, but it's not character, it's charm. All right. And it does feel good, especially if it's a man to a woman or a woman to a man, right? You're so handsome. Oh, I love, you have such a good job, all the kind of things, right? But it's charm. What's character? What's good character?
Somebody in the chat, Leslie, put down too good to be true. How would you put that into a charm word?
Yeah, too good to be true, right? Yeah, Teflon-like, right?
Oh, Leslie, that's a good word right there.
Yeah, Teflon. Everything. Yeah, Teflon-like. They're just perfect, too perfect.
That's right? Powerful right
good,
there.
Yeah. But we don't have any character qualities. How about this one? Honest. That's kind of boring. Big old honest accountant, a big old honest, person, but that's not always charming. Sometimes someone speaks the truth in love and it's not very fun at all, right? It's not very pretty. It's not very charming, but it's important. So honest. What else? What is a character quality versus a charming quality? right? Charm is funny, flattering, Teflon-like. What else?
You know,
Passionate? Yep.
I would say one thing that's coming up for me, Leslie, as in charming is I would say very paying a lot of attention to appearance.
Okay. So
Right?
they,
So it would be right, it would be very outward focused of their
Mhm.
outward adornment, so to speak.
Okay, so they're stylish, they're beautiful. And again, there's nothing wrong with these things, but don't
Right.
confuse them with character.
Character.
So when we're looking at a date, if we were 16 years old, we would be looking for a hot guy who has a good car, who might have a good job, who's got money, who dresses nice. What are we looking at? We're looking at charm. We're
So
looking
good.
at charm, right? He might be a real bad boy. He might not have any character, but he might be hot and he might be very charming and love bombing us to death and telling us we're wonderful and he can't live without us and we are the air that he breathes. And oh my gosh, our heart is a fluttering away, isn't it? Humble
There
isn't
we go.
charming, is it? Humble
Yes.
isn't charming. That character. Trustworthy. Okay, trustworthy is another character quality. Reliable.
Yes, faithful, Leslie, is
Mhm.
another character quality.
Faithful. Okay.
Reliable, I'm seeing in the chat.
Yeah, reliable. Mhm.
Dependable.
Mhm. Dependable.
Oh, that's a big one. You know, charm. I don't know. And I've fallen into this, just keeping it real here. I have been the charming girl in the room sometimes, and I have said, we so need to have lunch. Okay. And I really sincerely mean it. And then I never, if I do not follow through with that,
Mhm.
is that truly authentically me? Or was I wrapped up and caught in the moment? And I think that that can be another charm characteristic is, how would I phrase that? I would, how do I want to phrase that? You're impulsive. I think it would be, I would say charming could be a little bit impulsive. It's not consciously thought out because again, it's a strategy.
All right, so let's put it strategic, okay? And they
There
can
we
do
go.
it strategic, okay? And that can be used in good ways, but it can also be used in very bad ways. All right,
Yeah.
but it's not a character quality. It's a skill, and it's a charming skill that charmers use to be strategic about what they want. So if they want to go to a bank and take out a loan, they're going to be strategic about how they do that, right? They're going to be charming and they're going to be strategic. Now, hopefully they're also honest and humble and all that rest of the things so they can get a loan. But we want to understand. I was telling Leanne, I was just talking to a friend yesterday who's been separated from someone for 6 months. And she said to me, I see him making some real changes. And I said, like what? And every single change that he was making was in this column. And I said, I don't think you're seeing clearly. The changes that you need have to be in this column. Right? If you're going to have a relationship with someone, it's a whole lot of fun to be with charming people. But usually if that's all they have, if they don't have some of this, then it's going to be all kinds of problems. So how does someone use some of this? So that our topic is, how do they hide behind this? What are some of the strategies that someone may someone may hide behind some of this, right? Especially if they are strategic. A wolf in sheep's clothing is very strategic. Yes. They put on their sheep costume. They're likable. They're passionate. They're beautiful. They're like sheep, and they bite like wolves.
Yes.
Right. And so we need to understand, especially when you're doing relationship or you're trying to reconcile with someone, which category do you see more behaviors in? Do you see more behaviors in the character quality? They're honest, they're humble, they're trustworthy, they're reliable, they're faithful, they're dependable, they care about you, they show that in their actions. They don't just tell you how beautiful you are and how your eyes sparkle and you have the most beautiful skin and I love your body, all the things that make a woman heart pound. Oh, I feel so good. But when push comes to shove, you want a man who shows you he cares about you. By how? By helping you when you're throwing up, by taking care of your dog when you're going away. Practical, hands-on action steps that say, I care about you. That you hear that he's honest on the phone when he's talking to his mother. He's not lying to his mother. Because if he's lying to his mother on the phone or to his boss or his children, understand he's going to lie to you too.
You too. Leslie, thank you for saying that. That's so important. And that can be something that we need to really pay attention to, because a lot of people can be really engaging and they can say what you want to say. And they can be publicly, it can go both ways, right? They can be lying or they can be schmoozing. And then behind closed doors, they're nothing like that with you. They're critical. They're dismissive in private. They're two different people.
So those are charming qualities. They turn on the light bulb of charm when they need to manipulate you. So they're very strategic. Where do I need to be charming to get you to do what I want you to do? And we're going to be doing a workshop in about a week and a half, March 31st, Tuesday, 2 weeks from last Tuesday, on this whole topic. If he doesn't hit you, is it still abuse? And I'm going to be covering some of the more subtle ways. Obviously, if he's cursing at you, if he's lying to you, all the things, we've kind of talked about that and we know that can be abusive. But what about more of the subtle things? The love bombing. So my friend yesterday was talking about, her husband's being so nice and he's, doing everything she wants. And of course he's love bombing her right now. That hasn't changed his character. He's using a strategy to get her to back off from the divorce. That's what charmers do. They control you through their charm. And whether they're controlling pastors, whether they're controlling husbands, whether they're controlling friends, they will turn on the charm as long as you're continue to be fooled by it. And this is where you're not going to change the charmer. You're not going to take his lights out. If they don't work for you, he's going to move on to someone else. The journey that you have to take right now is, how do I recognize this? And girls, ladies, I think it's fair to say that it's very easy to fall for the charm. I mean, I'm older now and I have dear friends who've been married and divorced and they're dating again. And I had a dear friend who was dating someone. I liked him. He was very charming. He came to my house. We had dinner. We went out. It was great. And she rushed into an engagement with him. And I said, I don't think this is a good idea. You don't know him long enough. You can't really see his character. But one of the things that she wanted was a prenup. And he kept postponing the prenup. And he was an attorney. And he kept postponing creating this prenup. And the wedding was getting closer and the wedding was getting closer. And I sat her down and I said, girlfriend, you have to promise me that you will do that this week before you're getting married on Saturday. Will you do this prenup? Because she had some assets. And supposedly he had a lot of assets too. And I said, you need a prenup. And so she insisted on the prenup. And guess what? Not only did he have no assets, he was in the red. I mean, like hugely in the red. And I got a text from her, the wedding is called off. I don't want to talk about it. And I get it. She was humiliated that she had allowed herself. This is a smart woman, a counselor, a smart woman who had gotten completely bamboozled by a good charmer. And that she almost married him and would have lost half her assets. Right. And so she wasn't paying attention to the checks and balances that help you discern. And because he was spiritual and he could use spiritual language, because he knew the Bible and God wants us to be one, and I don't want to have sex with you before we're married, and we're both older now and we need to get married soon because I miss you and I love you so much and I'm into your body and I don't want to defile God. All that spiritual talk. Oh, he's such a godly man. He's going to swindle her out of money, but he doesn't want to have sex outside of marriage, right? Can you see the inconsistency there? And so this is where, ladies, I want to help you know, discern, get smarter so that you're not so easily taken to the cleaners. You're not so easily hurt. So one of the quickest ways that you can tell whether someone is genuinely nice and thoughtful or whether you are being manipulated is how. What's the one word you need to use to be able to tell if you are being charmed or you're with someone with decent character? What's the one word? Let's say you're trying to reconcile a marriage and he wants to move home and he's been so nice and he's bringing you flowers and he's helping with the kids and he mowed the grass finally and he finally fixed the garage that he's been promising to fix for 5 years and all the things. And you think, wow, he's really changing. You got it, girls. Katrina. Yeah, his divine protection, big old capital N-O. This is the word you must learn to use. Like my friend said, no, I'm not willing to do the wedding, the prenup after the wedding. We have to do it now. Once you say no to a manipulator, they will either switch tactics to another charming tactic. Yes. And if you say no to that one, like, I love you so much. I just need you so much. Can't we spend time together tonight? I need you. I really want to spend time. And you start to feel guilty, like, oh, I'm being unloving. And if they know the scriptures, they can say, you're to love me and you're to sacrifice yourself for me. And, I need you. And can't you be here for me once? I'm only asking you. And if you don't say no, I'm not saying always, but certain times, you'll never be able to see whether they can respect your no, or you're supposed to just jump when they need you. You're supposed to do what they say. They'll do it the love bombing way, the charming way first. But now you'll see the horns come out when you start saying no. And that's where you know this isn't a person of character. I'm being played.
Oh, so good, Leslie. Thank you for that. That was just so helpful. And I'm seeing that the chat is expressing that as well. And I really appreciate a word that I saw earlier about charm that really dovetails beautifully, that I haven't spoken aloud yet. And that is insincere. Insincere. And if your actions do not match your words, there's some insincerity there. Now, we're not all going to be perfect, and I'm going to say and do things, and I have really good intentions sometimes. There's a really big difference when that is a strategy or a manipulative tactic, or when it's, I just got over committed and I said some things that I would do that I didn't have the capacity to do. That's very different. There is the ownership, just like your friend, right? He didn't take ownership of doing the prenup or anything. It was, and I love that you brought in all that spiritual language about honoring the body, honoring the heart. God says this, God says that. And that, I love how destruction can hide behind even biblical words and verses. And I appreciate the fact that we can drive that home in very real ways, that we don't have to be played. And so, Leslie, I love that you use the word played. And so what is one thing besides using our no to kind of test the waters a little bit and see if someone is sincere, if there is empathy, if there really is that desire to be in a mutual relationship where God is at the center? Because I know our women, they want to put God at the center and they want others to join them in that, whether it be their kids, their grands, their spouses, or, different family members. We want relationships that are healthy.
Mm-hmm. So I think that, these are the testers that I would use, that if I were with somebody for the first time, or if I were meeting a new person, or let's say that somebody wanted to work for me, or, if I were widowed and I were going to remarry again, which I don't know that I would, considering the way people go these days. But if I were, and I talk to a lot of women who want to, I would not only say no, but I would share my opinion on things. I would share what you don't want to share. So if you are dating and you aren't sure who this person is, please don't play all your cards. That would be a really bad decision. So if you put on your dating site, or if you say, I want a Christian man and I want a man who's financially stable and he's going to be all those things in his manipulative way.
Check.
Right? Checklist. He's going to check those boxes so that you're fooled into thinking he's exactly what I've been praying for because you just told him what to be. All right. And so I would hold that pretty close to my chest, and I would know who I want to be with, but I wouldn't tell a person who I want to be with. I would let him show his colors. So how does he handle stress? How does he handle money? How does he handle me when I disagree or disappoint him?
Yes.
Right? Am I being guilt tripped? Am I being spiritually bullied? So, for example, those of you who are married, but you're separated right now, and you're saying to your husband, I just need time. Well, God says that you need to, we need to reconcile. Well, he's not letting you have your time. Or I'm not comfortable with rejoining our finances. Well, God says, they start to use the God card. They start to use biblical verses. God hates divorce. You're being disloyal. You shouldn't be telling anyone. God doesn't want anybody else to know our business. You're shaming me. You're being disloyal. All the things that really serve their protection to hide what they're doing. And so if you're starting to get that kind of pressure, you need to submit. God says this, God says that. When someone is trying to control you, even if they mean well, like if your counselor or your pastor is trying to control you, you can't divorce, you can't do this, you can't do that. Understand that they are using their power and influence in you in a wrong way, that Jesus never told people what they could or couldn't do, right? The rich young ruler, he said, this is what I'd like. If this is what you want for a relationship with me, you need to sell your stuff and come and follow me. And the rich young ruler said, I don't want to do that. And Jesus said, okay. Judas, are you sure you want to betray me at the Lord's Supper? And Judas said, yep, I'm going to go do what I want to do. And Jesus said, okay, go. Right. And so Jesus didn't try to stop people from doing something he didn't want them to do, even if he knew it was a bad thing. Right. And that's not someone's job to do over you or you to do over them. When you start being in relationship with people who are trying to manage you or you're trying to manage them, that's the first signs of this is not healthy. Is it toxic? Is it destructive? Those are other levels. But you're not to control other people. You're to control you. Self-control is the fruit of the Spirit, not other people control. And so when someone's trying to control you, whether it's a male in your church as a pastor, elder, and I'm a shepherd over you, so I get to tell you what to do, or I'm your head, I'm your authority over you, and I get to tell you what to do, understand this is misusing spiritual language to accomplish nefarious purposes.
Oh, that's so good. And I think, Leslie, I love that you brought up all of those little phrases. That's so helpful. And I'm grateful. Yes, this will be recorded. You can listen to it again because you just gave a lot of great information. And, something that I wrote down as you were sharing, and I would love it if you could speak to this just a little bit and we could, dialogue about it. But when you were talking about this whole idea of power over, using spirituality to power over, charm to power over, it just becomes like this masquerade. And, as you were sharing, I wrote down, wow, wouldn't it be cool to talk about what does power with someone look like?
Yeah.
Instead of being powered over.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a really good question, Leanne. And I'm under these lights and my sun's coming in. Take off my jacket. But, when Jesus was telling his disciples, hey, guys, so we all get some power. So you as a parent have power. I mean, you can use power over your children to harm them, right? We can use power over people politically. We can use power over people economically. We can use power over people spiritually if we know more than they do, to control, bully, intimidate, however we misuse our power. So when God in his wisdom, when Jesus was here on earth, he knew that the patriarchal struggle and the patriarchal structure that the Bible is living in wasn't his design for human beings. That wasn't God's order for things, in spite of what some Christians will tell you. That wasn't God's original design. He created Adam and Eve equal. He created them to co-labor in the garden. Sin is what disrupted the power struggle, or created the power struggle. And so when Jesus came to earth, he came to show us what God was like. And so he says to his disciples, hey, buddies, I'm giving you power. I'm giving you authority. But do not misuse this power and authority over people, not like the Gentiles do, where you rule oppressively over people. And the same thing for husbands. Husbands don't rule over people. And so this is really important that we understand. And I'm just going to take a little rant here. In 1 Corinthians 7, the passage where so many women have been manipulated into feeling like they have no say about their body, like your body's not your own. You have to give me your body anytime I want because the Bible says so. Well, actually, if you read that passage and you know the context and you know the history of why he said what he said, that's not what he said at all. And if you think about it, Paul's writing to a patriarchal culture where every man totally felt it was his right to have his wife sexually if he wanted to. That wasn't the issue. The question was really, if we're Christians now, can we still have sex if we're married? And that was the real question that Paul's answering. But the amazing thing that Paul said in this verse, I'm going to get to the power part, is the word likewise. And so in this passage where he says, husbands, wives, you don't have authority over your body. Your husband has authority over your body. And likewise, husbands, you don't have authority over your body. Your wife has authority over your body. That was unheard of in that culture for Paul to level the marital situation from one power over, I get your body whenever I want, to, oh no, your body can't be over mine because I won't let you, because I'm telling your body can't be over my body, right? And so you both have equal say here. And this is mistaught in a lot of churches that believe this stuff, but I'm telling you that's not what it says. And so Jesus doesn't want a power over culture, not in society, not in marriage. Yes, we have authorities, government, policemen that protect people from people who misuse their power criminally and otherwise. But in terms of relationships, the church relationships, the family relationships, it's not a power over, it's a power. You have power. So you're not to power over your children, for example, as a mom. You're given power to go with them. Like, how do I empower my child to stick up for themselves? How do I empower my child to learn to speak up for themselves, to dress themselves, to do their own math, to be able to wash their own clothes, so that when they are out of my care, they are powerful enough to take care of themselves and their own babies when they have them. And so we're to power with people and we're to power under people, bear one another's burdens, those who are disempowered, the oppressed, the disenfranchised, the people who have nothing. We're to come under them and lend them some of our power to lift them up. That's how we're to use our power as Christians.
Leslie, thank you for that. And, you know, it's something that came up for me as you were talking about the power over piece, and I'm just thinking of pressure. You know, when there's power, there's a tremendous amount of pressure in the room, and charm can look like that. And they can pressure. A charming strategy would be pressure also, just like you were speaking about. And it can bring, when all of that gets twisted, it can bring a lot of confusion.
Have you ever been to like a sales meeting where someone's trying to sell you like a timeshare or whatever? You know, that pressure, and they're using power over and scare tactics, but they're doing it in a very charming way. I mean, they're not doing it in a mean way. If they were doing it in a mean way, you'd be out of there, right? So they're trying to get your money, and they're using this charm and power over and scarcity and all the stuff to make you feel afraid. And so one of the things that you need to notice, that when you're with a really charming person, when you speak up for yourself, when you disagree, when you want to do something different, do they threaten your belonging? Right? Ooh. So do you have to lose yourself in order to belong to this group, to this church, to this person? Like, do you have to not be you in order for him to be happy with you?
Leslie, that is so powerful. Do they threaten your belonging? If we could just put a pin in that a moment, because I think that's where destruction hides. Yeah. And many women that we talk to every single day wonder where they fit and if they belong. And I have spoken and coached with women, Leslie, who they don't even know that if they belong in their own home anymore. because they feel very displaced, very dismissed, and very confused by these different charmful, love bombing, or just outright malicious, mean, manipulative behavior. And that sense of belonging is hijacked. And so I would love to ask, if I could, for some of our friends here in this space, how do you know that you belong? What might be a green light? My grandkids call it, that was a green choice. If they make a really good choice, if they make a really good choice, they're like, Grammy, that was a green choice, wasn't it? And then if they make a not so, it's like, ooh, that was a red choice, Grandma. I'm like, yeah. And so that behavior didn't belong in who it is that you are. And so I would love to hear, how do you know? What is that inner knowing inside of you that you belong? What are you experiencing? If you're not experiencing being displaced, what are you experiencing?
Yeah, and I would love to ask the audience that. Put in the chat, how do you know you belong? Because, and you can belong to a really unhealthy system. So cults, for example, would be very unhealthy belonging. But if you go along with the cult, you might have an amazing experience of closeness and intimacy and camaraderie and companionship, but you're not allowed to be yourself. You have to be a clone of whatever the cult says you have to be. So you can't ask questions, you can't disagree, you can't make your own choices. And so as long as you're totally compliant, you belong. But if you start saying, I don't want to do that this way, or I don't agree with that, or no, you're kicked out. So you could belong to that and really feel safe and snug and secure, but it's not a healthy belonging. And so what does a healthy belonging look like when you belong to a family, when you belong to a church, when you belong to an organization? What does that healthy belonging look and feel like?
I love that. I'm seeing peace.
Peace. Yep. So there's peace.
I love how yep. I love how you stated at the beginning, Leslie, and it was really powerful. I don't want to go past too quickly by it, because you said, I can be me. So I don't have to twist myself and be any different than who I am. Now, we're always going to grow and shift and change and be empowered and mature. That's different than what we're talking about here. Okay, I love this. One of our sweet friends said, I couldn't even answer how I know I belong. Ladies, this is what's so important. And this is how we can peel back these layers that keep us confused.
Right.
Is by asking these really powerful questions. Internal freedom, peace, accepted.
We would love to hear your questions. If you have a question that you'd like to ask us, please put it in the chat. I'm not sure where they can put the question anonymously. Leanne, do you know where they can do that?
Well, it used to be leslievernick.com/question.
Yeah, so I'm not sure if that's the same one. And if not, if you could put that link into the chat where they can put a question if you don't want to put it here, because we have about 20 more minutes that we'd love to answer your question. But God has wired us to long to belong.
Yes.
Long to belong. So all of us long to belong. And that makes us especially vulnerable to charmers, right? And con artists, because they will appeal to this longing to belong. But ask yourself what it costs you. And the webinar that I'm going to be doing next week on the 31st, not next Tuesday, but the Tuesday after, is really going to address that. What does it take and what does it cost you to belong to a family, to belong to a husband, to belong to a church? Does it cost you your integrity? Does it cost you your ability to speak up for yourself? Does it cost you your growth? When it costs you your becoming. So we have two tasks in life. God calls us to long to belong, and we also long to become, right? We long to become everything God wants us to become. The caterpillar wants to become the butterfly, right? The seed wants to become the oak tree. And so we want to do both, belong and become. But if your belonging squashes your becoming, it's not a healthy belonging. Right? Your becoming should be enhanced by belonging to the community. They nourish you, they support you, they clap for you, they correct you, all the things that help us to mature into the best version of ourselves. And so write down those two words: I long to belong and I long to become. And if my belonging costs me my becoming, I'm not allowed to grow, I'm not allowed to change, I'm not allowed to question, I'm not allowed to, become the sunflower in a sea of lilies, then maybe you don't belong in the sea of lilies, right? And so that's that discernment. And I'm going to unpack that for you during the workshop. So if you haven't signed up for the workshop yet, I think we have over 1,000 women signed up for the workshop already, but we're going to go to leslievernick.com/join workshop. And the topic is, if he doesn't hit you, is it still destructive? Is it still abusive? Yes, it can be. And I want to show you how to discern that so that you know what to do, not just, oh, yes, that's me, but now what? That's what we want to help you figure out. How do I get unstuck? And this is all free for you. I have a 10-page workbook for you. I've got other kinds of free resources for you. And our Doors to Conquer will be open. For those of you who know what Conquer is only open twice a year. This will be open now again in March. We will open it on the 31st and close it early April. So if you've been wanting and waiting to join Conquer, we will open our doors that day. But even if you're not ready or that's not for you, come to the workshop so that you can at least get the workbook and the free training. And we take this off of social media so that you have the privacy to really ask the questions you need to ask. And the time, we spend about 2.5 hours with you, an hour for the workshop. And then about an hour and a half, one of my coaches and myself will stay and answer your questions in detail so that you can really get the support that you need to make good decisions for yourself and your kiddos, because your kiddos need you to be healthy. They need at least one healthy parent in order for them to flourish as well.
Beautiful. So I'm seeing in the chat some beautiful quotes, right? People are knowing how they belong, Leslie. And one of our friends here said, maybe belonging looks like someone sincerely asking, what do you think? How do you feel? What do you want?
Yeah.
Love that. Another one that I saw here just a moment ago. Here we go. Where it just disappeared. Ah, here it is. When you look in the mirror, you know exactly who's looking back at you. Another characteristic of belonging.
Yeah, and another characteristic of belonging is that you are challenged and encouraged to grow, to become your best self. The community of Christ, when we look at the Bible, in the community of Christ, Paul challenged Peter. Hey, Peter, you're not saying things correctly. You need to look at this. And Peter challenged Paul at different things. And we are challenging one another, not in a corrective or critical kind of way, but to be able to say, hey, your best self. If someone wouldn't have said to me, Leslie, I think you have a gift for discerning God's word. I think you need to write, and I think you need to speak. I'm like, I would have probably never even thought of it, right? And so part of my community could speak into me and say, you need to sharpen your sword, Leslie, and you need to grow in certain areas because God has something for you. But this is what happens when you belong to a life-giving community versus a suppressing community. And so many women, I'm afraid, get suppressed in their church community because there's a very narrow place for women, and you're to just be the good wife instead of a whole person. And so we want you to become a whole person, that God created you to be more than just a wife and a maid and a sex object. You're a person, and you are to flourish as your husband is. And part of your role is to help him flourish, and part of his role is to help you flourish. And a man of character would want that. And a man of charm would not, because it's all about him.
Leslie, that's so good. Somebody else typed into the chat, tagging off of what you just spoke. If your belonging costs me my becoming, then it's not belonging.
Yeah.
Oh, beautiful. And you are beloved, friends.
Right.
You are beloved.
And B. Ray is asking a question on Instagram. Is there a way to partner with y'all to start a ministry at my church to help women dealing with emotional abuse? Certainly reach out to us. We do have resources. And so, reach out to us at leslievernick.com and we can certainly have a conversation. We also have a group called Equip, which we use for church leaders and counselors to get more equipped to deal with this in their church. So, so what kind of questions? Here's one. Oh, I see it. Is there a way to partner with y'all?
So you just read it. Way to go.
I just read it. Any other questions that you have about this? Let me say a couple other things. if you're told when you bring up something, whether it's to your leader, to your Christian counselor, to your husband, that don't rely on your feelings. Just listen to what I have to say. Boundaries are unbiblical. If they're dismissing your pain by saying, well, this is just unhealed trauma, or you just need to, get on with things. They're using spiritual language to bypass what just happened. You need to forgive. Why aren't you getting over this? Why aren't you putting the past in the past? Why aren't you dying to self? You're just being triggered over and over again because of your past. And when you resist their control over you, it's seen as rebellion. Understand this is an unhealthy, toxic strategy used by oftentimes very charming husbands, pastors, Christian counselors, and lady friends in ministry to silence you, to suppress you, to squash you into who they think you should be. That is not God's will for you.
So powerful. And I think even as you were saying all of those phrases, I mean, I just got like sweaty pits and my heart just dropped into my stomach. And we know many of you have heard these words from your small group leaders, from your pastors, perhaps from the people in your life. And these words, Leslie, one that I've heard women share with me that they have heard almost on repeat is, well, you're not being very forgiving. Mm-hmm. And so they've turned on the charm, they've love bombed, and then they've blown it because their charm is a higher priority to them than their character is. And then all of a sudden you're just supposed to forgive all of that. Mm-hmm. And then it can get thrown back at you. And then one of the women in our feed asked a question, if I could read it aloud, that pertains just to that very topic. Would that be okay if I read it? Mm-hmm. All right. It says, if my husband outwardly appears to have good character, but has been a good liar, living a double life for decades, how can I ever tell if he has changed when outwardly he appears the same as always?
So Sheridan, what I would say to you about this is that you can't. And so I think that one of the things that we talk about in our ministry, especially in Conquer, is that sometimes trust is permanently broken because someone is such a good pretender and such a good liar that you were fooled for so many years. You don't know ever if he's telling the truth because his charm is so persuasive and he's so smooth at it that he could be telling the truth, or he might be back to where he was and you wouldn't know until the hits the fan again. And so sometimes trust, maybe not love, but sometimes trust is permanently severed and that you can never trust that person again. And so then you have some hard decisions to make. Do I give him, if I don't trust this person, what happens to our marriage? Because in a marriage, you give someone access to things of yours that you don't give anybody else. You give them access to your bed, your body, and your bank account. Nobody else has access to those three things except for a spouse. And if you don't trust that person to do you good, not harm all the days of your life, then maybe you can forgive this person, but you may not be able to stay married to that person because they are such a good liar. And that's the consequence of their sin, right? Is that you don't trust them and you can't because they're really good liars. And that's a hard choice. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just got excited for a minute because this thought just, came into my spirit. Forgiveness and trust are not the same thing. Mm-hmm. And maybe somebody needs to hear that today. There's another question, Leslie, that says, what is the best way to respond when I feel that I do not belong? Like, you're too loud, stop whistling. Why do you make that sound? Can't you be quiet? You're doing it wrong, etc., etc., etc. Seriously does not like anything about me. I cannot do anything right by him. I feel the weight of that.
I do too. And I'm so sad for you because I don't know how you don't belong. you don't belong to someone who rejects you constantly, right? So I had a mom who did that to me too, and I didn't belong in that relationship, all right? So we didn't have a relationship because I was unaccepted. And so part of belonging is that you are accepted and valued for who you are, not just what you do. And sadly, many Christian women are valued and accepted only for what they do. So you make dinner, you take care of the kids, you clean the house, you bring in some income, and you regularly have sex. And that's all they want from you. And so if you do anything outside that, you disagree, you want to have a conversation, you laugh too loud, you miss dinner that day because you want to go take a class at a community college, you're in trouble because his view of you is very narrow. You are the wife. You're not a person. And I think this is a teaching that's been mishandled quite a bit in the church. And I think women are going to have to start not beating their breasts and all of that, but start saying, wait a minute, I'm not just a wife. There's more to me than just like a husband isn't just a husband. He's a person and he's not just a paycheck. He would be insulted if we said you're just a paycheck. I don't care anything about you. As long as you bring home the paycheck and mow the grass and, clean the car and, repair the broken things in the house. There's nothing else I want from you. That's pretty dismissive and pretty disrespectful. And most of us would never think that would be okay. And yet somehow we think it's okay when he treats us that way. And it's not. And it's okay for you to say, hey, it sounds like you don't really like me and you don't really want to be around me. And we don't belong to everyone. Jesus didn't belong to everyone. A lot of people didn't like Jesus. So don't take it personally. He talked about rejection yesterday. And rejection hurts, but sometimes it's not personal at all, that you just don't fit with that person.
Right.
I was talking to a friend this week, and I'm a strong introvert. So if you were to see me at a party, I would look very different to you. I would be like quiet. I would be watching the room. I would not be talking because the only time I talk really is if I have something to say that's deep. I'm not a chit chatter. I'm not a shoot the breeze kind of person. And so if somebody wanted that kind of friend, it wouldn't be me. If you want a deep friend who can talk deep and have some serious conversations, I'm all in. But I don't belong to all kinds of groups. So that's okay. Know who you are and where you fit and where you don't fit. But I would certainly challenge your husband and say, hey, it sounds like you don't really want me around. And as long as I do the chores you want me to do, that's about it. Am I reading that right? And he might say, yeah, suit yourself. And now what's your options? You have to think about that.
Well, yeah, then you've got some information. And I think sometimes we're afraid to have those conversations and we don't know how to start them. And I think, clearing away some of that confusion, and that's what's going to happen at the workshop. So I hope you all are saving your seat for the workshop because Leslie, like you said, there's going to be a workbook, there's going to be Q&A, there's going to be beautiful teaching, and a lot of clarity is going to be offered up at the end of this month. And the workshop will be offered at 2 different times on that Tuesday. It'll be offered at 12 p.m. Eastern time and 7:30 p.m. Eastern time on March the 31st. You want to carve out some time to be there live because maybe you are listening to us this evening and you've been shrinking. So because of maybe you're anxious, maybe you're walking on eggshells, maybe you're asking yourself all these questions about belonging and you're confused and you've lost your voice and you don't even know how to ask a question anymore.
Yeah. Deidre has a question and I'll read it, Leanne, maybe you can answer it. In a marriage where a spouse is a Christian and very involved in church, he has a true gift, visions and prophecy, yet is completely a different person behind closed doors. There is no relationship with the grandkids or my family. He has no desire to have any responsibilities to truly connect. It's always a charm here, a love bomb there to get what he wants. I just hang on to hope and seek God for future steps.
Well, I love that you asked that. And this is where I would say he is a charmer. He could be a charmer and he's showing you his patterns. Leslie, as you read that, there was many different evidences. He's not connected with the grandkid, all these different things, right? So you're seeing some of his patterns. And so I would lovingly ask you, what are these patterns telling you? And, one hand on your heart, one hand on your belly. And this is where you can exercise that discernment because the only way that we are going to know what is behind all of this is through the Holy Spirit and his power within you. And so going to the Lord and ask him, you are the source of all wisdom and knowledge, God. Help me to see what I can't see about these patterns on my own. And I know that there's been times in my life where I have had to do that. And then I've had to be very, very quiet before the Lord, because charm, again, is about impressions. Character is going to be about being consistent. So if the patterns that you're seeing are consistently wackadoodle and off, then we get to pay attention to that. And we don't need to dismiss them and say that they're having a bad day. Because when it's showing up in multiple areas, perhaps it's their character.
Yeah, thanks, Leanne. That was so good. And Deidre, I would add that, you mentioned that he's got this gift and you're calling it a true gift, but these gifts can be counterfeited too. That's why in the Old Testament and the New, they say test the spirits and see, because if someone's prophecies are not turning out to be true, there's a lot of people who are very charismatic that way, but they're really not getting that from the Lord. And there's been a lot of news about that lately in the news. When you say he's a completely different person behind closed doors, I'd really like you to examine that. So it might be that he does have this gift, and he's also very introverted, and he's not social, and he's not very, good with relationships. That might be true. And so it's hard for him to one-on-one with people and grandkids and all that kind of stuff. So when I would talk about character, I would also ask you, is he honest? Is he reliable? Is he faithful? All the things that we talked about. Let me pull it out. Is he honest, humble, trustworthy, reliable, faithful, dependable? He might not be real social, all right? But social isn't necessarily a character quality. Now, is he loving to the grandkids, or is he mean? That would tell you something. He might not be real social, where he's playing games on the floor or letting them ride piggyback on his back or any of those kind of things. But is he loving? Does he, care about them? Would he care about them in a loving way if they fell down? Would he attend to them? Those kind of things. So I'd really like you to ask yourself, does he demonstrate the fruit of the Spirit? Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, self-control. Does he have some of these character qualities? It might, again, be that he's not great with people in terms of social skills. That doesn't mean that has bad character. It just means that maybe he's a really strong introvert like I am. I have better social skills, but maybe he doesn't. But what I am saying is that if he's doing this to flatter and to be, appreciated and everybody pays attention to him, if he's doing it for his own glory and he shows some of the more nefarious lack of character qualities, like he's not honest, he's mean-spirited, he's unloving, he's not self-controlled, then I wouldn't believe that it's a true gift. I would believe it's part of the charm.
Leslie, that's so good. Because she did say at the end of her thing, or the end of her question, she said, I just lost it here. It's always a charm here and a love bomb there to get what he wants.
Yeah.
So Deirdre, this is what is the motivations of his heart? And that can be super duper manipulative. And so these patterns, look and believe the behavior. His patterns are telling the truth. Charm tries to cover up the truth.
It's like putting frosting on a cardboard box, or worse, putting frosting on a cake that's covered with rat poison. That's what charm is. Yeah. And when you cut into it and really try to nourish yourself with it, it's toxic. The frosting is lovely. It's appealing. It tastes good. But the substance is toxic. So we're going to have to close for today. What is your takeaway? What is your takeaway from today? Put it in the chat. What is your takeaway from today? And our next Facebook Live is going to be tomorrow morning. Cycles of harm, times of relief. What does that mean? And I will be with you then tomorrow morning, or tomorrow at noon. Cycles of harm. And this is a really great segue to what we've just talked about, because there might be cycles of harm and then periods of relief where he does seem really contrite. But is he really contrite or is he charming? And how do you tell the difference?
It's going to be so important. Well, this has just been a wonderful evening together around a really hard topic. And we thank you all for your engagement. We thank you for hanging in there with us, submitting your questions, putting your encouragements into the chat. So would love to hear. Yeah, type into the chat. What are you going to pull away? Yeah.
And we want you to notice how it's been here, that you've been able to be heard and seen and had this little bit of a community, even though it's a public community. That's why we're so passionate about you showing up for the workshop. That's why I pay extra money so that I can rent this webinar site so that we can go over there and be a little bit more private, that you don't have to worry about all your stuff being on social media, that it's there. But you don't get any of that if you don't show up. You will get a replay of the webinar if you just want the information, but the information isn't going to really help you the transformation. The transformation comes from the community and the support that you get in the attending live and even joining some of the support groups outside of that. So it's, if you really want the transformation and you really want that sense of connection and belonging, then show up at the workshop, because you will feel that. You will feel, oh my gosh, I belong here because I'm heard and I'm seen and I'm not alone and I'm safe. And that's part of the criteria of belonging. I'm heard, I'm seen, I'm safe. I'm safe to be me. I'm not just here to be a worker bee. I matter. And so we want you to come to the workshop. We want you to experience that in your heart of hearts. So we hope to see you at the workshop on the 31st, but I will see you tomorrow at noon Eastern time. And we will be talking about, during that period of lull, what do you need to watch out for? What do you need to be noticing? Because it feels so much better than the bad times. But the good times may not really be good. It might be the frosting over the rotten cake. So we'll see you tomorrow. Leanne, thank you so much for being with us and your contributions. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.